Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Cutrara, and I am the Program Development and Curriculum Innovation Specialist at York University. I work in the Office of the Vice Provost, and I work with faculties across, like all the faculties at York, across all the different campuses with a lot of different programs. And I work with them on program development or redevelopment or articulation of the program or rearticulation of the program. And it's always a real pleasure to be able to talk about the vision of a program with programs and faculty members, and then look at what that might look like for curriculum. And I often find that I start by kind of saying the same things about curriculum and program outcomes and mapping curriculum, for example. And also, we ask for the same things on forms like new program forms or major modification forms or the self-study for a cyclical program review. So I created a website with some of that information that I share all the time, and I am creating these little videos as a complement to that. So you can watch, you can read, you can do both. You can, I was going to say do neither, but no, you need to do one or the other, or I guess talk to me, so that some of these elements you can familiarize yourself with before we start working on them. Or you could be working with curriculum people in your faculties or the teaching commons as well. Now, we ask for 3 different maps in a lot of these major forms that the Office of the Vice Provost looks at for things like quality assurance, right? For new program, major modifications, for cyclical program review, self-study. We ask for 3 different maps, and they are related to program learning outcomes in particular. Now, I've created other videos on program learning outcomes, and I created videos on the other 2 maps. Or 2 of the maps, I should say. One mapping the learning outcomes to the degree level expectations, and one about mapping the curriculum, what a curriculum map is. Now, this is about the 3rd map, but I'm going to take a little zoom out before I talk specifically about that map. Now, that map is about assessment. Now, assessment is a topic that I think we're going to be talking about more at York in the years to come, because we have these outcomes for our programs, but we need to make sure that we are meeting those outcomes, that we are doing those things, that we are achieving the goals that we set out, that we're meeting the commitments that we've made for our students. How do we assess that? How do we assess it at a program level? Not about students' individual grades, but is the program meeting the things that we said we were going to do? Is the program meeting these goals? Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach assessment, and there isn't just one hard and fast way. I should say in the States, I've been to a couple different conferences, and they have a different process of assessment, and they talk a lot about they take key assignments in a particular course in a program, and all of the professors will read those assignments and then use that as an assessment about whether or not the program level learning outcomes are being achieved through the student's assignment. So taking a 4th year final, for example, I think that's a pretty full on way to do program assessment. That's required, actually. We have a lot more movement in how we think about that, and so because we in Canada and Ontario in particular have a lot more movement about how we can think about that, the resources are often a little amorphous. It's think about it. So we at York are suggesting that you're doing it through a curriculum map that identifies assessment. That's not the only way to do it. So this little preamble is to say we do ask for this map, but there could be other ways that you're achieving the goals of the map, and that's okay too. So rather than start with the website where I talk about curriculum mapping, which is what I've done for the other mapping websites, I'm going to go to a different place on this website. Same website, the Curriculum Development and Innovation website. The link is below the description in this video, but you can also Google search it, get through it through the Vice Provost Academic website, and I on the program assessment area. Now, I start by saying it's not enough to just kind of dream about, envision, and design a program. You also need to assess it. are you meeting these goals? Now, the quality assurance, like Ontario Council Quality Assurance, does require this. So it's not just this benevolent thing. It is required. And so it's good to think about what this might look like. What does assessing your program look like? How are you going to do it? And what are the mechanisms that you're going to think about if you're off track, right? And by mechanisms, I don't mean this kind of punitive way of like, ooh, we're off track. So now we need to like make sure that professor is teaching X, Y, and Z in their classroom because they are off track. Maybe the professor is teaching something different than what was identified in a program learning outcome because the field has evolved. And so rather than teach about, oh, this is I'm trying to think of an example that's not embarrassing that I actually like know about. Okay, apologies. Rather than like teaching about like Jetsons, like the Jetsons level robots, they are now talking about AI, for example. Or maybe a Jetsons level robot was AI, separate from that. Maybe what they're talking about is the developments in the field. Then that's actually a really good opportunity to update the program learning outcomes. So it's not about whether or not you're doing what you're supposed to do, but is the program still articulating what it needs to articulate to achieve its goals, achieve its commitments to the students? So when we are then looking at assessment, and another way to think about this, and I use this here in this website too, it's like if you're doing research, right? You're not just collecting the data or identifying the text that you're using for analysis. You then have to analyze it, analyze the text, or analyze the data. You need to be able to do the thing with the thing that you're doing. And so this is what we're asking, that analysis, that kind of collection of analysis of data that identifies if your program is on track for what you've articulated. So on this website, I identify that program assessment is the evaluation of whether the parts and the whole of the program are being achieved. It's a discrete focus on an analysis of the curriculum. It's an opportunity when you're thinking about assessment to discuss and develop these kind of shared program vision amongst colleagues, right? So, oh, your program, your course doesn't do this anymore? Oh, is that because the field has moved on from those areas? Okay, that's great. What does it mean for our program to really respond and reflect to these evolving trends in the field? Program assessment is not student individual performance. It's not just like student X got these grades, therefore they're great and they move on. It is about the cohort level. It's about all the students. It's not about an individual student. It's also not about individual professors. This is not about teaching evaluations. It's not about you're a better professor than this person because you're meeting the program outcomes. That's not what this is about. It's, are the courses working for the whole? Are we doing the things that we set out to be doing? And it's not an opportunity to demonstrate excellence or failure. We're not saying like, oh yeah, don't worry. All of our courses meet all the program learning outcomes. We're the best, moving on. It is this opportunity for this discussion about, okay, the field hasn't changed in 5 years. What do we need our program to be able to do? Oh, we can see that students generally are not actually excelling once we get to these more advanced learning outcomes. So how can we better set them up for success? It's these types of holistic ideas. And we assess the program learning outcomes because we want to make sure everything is aligned. We want to make sure there's space to monitor that. We want to look at how the program works together. We want to make sure that someone actually has an eye on the program, right? Because that's so difficult when you are so focused on your teaching and your research and service. Maybe that takes you away from just thinking about the program and to other things. And we also need to ensure that it aligns with the quality definitions of quality as set out by Quality Council. So there's different assessment tools that you can use. Course mapping is one of them. It's not the only one, but it is the one I'm going to talk about today. And that can be part of assignments in key courses. And so this is also something I'm going to talk about today. Doesn't mean all the assignments in all the courses. You could identify that there's like an exam in that first year course. There is a group assignment in a second year course. There's a capstone in a fourth year course. And those are the key assignments. But it could also be things that you build into your program, such as a capstone, such as a portfolio of students' work, such as progress reports for students. And this often is very relevant for graduate students. It could also include things like surveys and focus groups with students. Like, we said we're going to do this in the program. Has this been your experience? You can do the same thing with alumni. You can also look at institutional data as identified by OIPA, our Office of Institutional Planning and Analysis. In ideally, you're going to use a few of these different assessment tools to do an assessment of your program. And I will be creating videos. All these videos are created right now in October. They align and complement a workshop that I'm doing for the cyclical program review self-study that takes place on October 27th. And there will be further videos either later this year or early in the new year about assessment in particular. But the course mapping and assignments in key courses is one of the things I want to talk about in our video today. So I said that in most of the forms that we ask for 3 different maps. One map is mapping the learning outcomes to degree level expectations. The other map is a curriculum map, which is showing how the program courses meet the learning outcomes. Those are simple X's. The other map that we ask for is about assessment. Now, again, there's so many ways to do assessment. A lot of people do assessment by a more descriptive, full version of a curriculum map. It's not the only way to do it. It might not even be the best way to do it, but it is one way to do it, and that's what I want to highlight right now. You can find this information under Program Course Assessments to Learning Outcomes. Now, in this curriculum map here, we have the courses here on the side, we have the learning outcomes at the top, and then we say which of the learning outcomes do the courses meet. Now, as I said in the previous video, I'll say again here, courses should not meet all the program learning outcomes. They should all work together all the courses should work together like a puzzle to complement each other, but also to create a whole. And so if you're saying that every course meets every learning outcome, then like, what's the point of all of those courses? You want some differentiation. So when you are now doing the program course assessments, this is the exact same chart, but you can see I've added a column under each learning outcome. And you can also see that there's some color and there's some different things happening here. But actually it represents the same information on that simplistic one. So here I said the table below, you can identify assessment detail in 3 areas. You can identify if the information was taught and or assessed in that course. So sometimes you'll teach something, but you're not going to assess it. That's okay. I mean, that's not good practice generally, like they should be aligned, but you could be introducing a concept and it will not be part of an assignment or not be on the exam. That's okay. So that's why we have taught and assessed as 2 separate things. Is it taught? Yes or no? Is it assessed? Yes or no? We also then, in this chart here, it's the level of coverage. So were the learning outcomes taught and assessed at an introductory level, or a more developed level, or by the time they get to this assessment, it should be mastered, right? So for example, in first year courses, yes, everything is introduced, but things could also be introduced in a third year course. So think about whether or not, what's the level of coverage. Now, if you teach something, you could teach something at an advanced level, but you're only assessing it at the introductory level. because you know that there's going to be other courses that are going to refine, define, build on what you've taught, and also going to assess it. So again, those things don't need to line up. They should be correlated. And also, and this is again really important for this assessment piece, what is the assessment type that is being used to, if you're assessing it, what is the assessment type to show this? So let's look at this course here. It's the third one here. I'm saying that it does, there's a little color code here, that I do talk about a more advanced version of Learning Outcome 2, but there is no assessment for it. I also talk about a more advanced version, a developed, right, of PLO 4, and I do a quiz, but the quiz is just on an introductory level. PLO 5 is also covered on a more advanced level, and actually there's an annotated bibliography where I want students to show that same level of interaction. There is a more advanced version of PLO 7, but no assignment. There is a more advanced version of PLO 8, but only there's just a presentation. It's an introductory level. It's not super advanced. So here I'm showing in that one course that whether it's taught and assessed, the level of coverage, and the assessment type. Now, and so you're actually showing quite a lot here, right? And so just keep an eye on things like, you shouldn't be assessing something at a mastery level if you have only taught at an introductory level. Now, all of this works really well when you are working with faculty members, your colleagues, to be able to say like, oh, if you're teaching at an introductory level, maybe I can advance it, or, like that's actually a really nice conversation. You also have to get data from your colleagues, which I recognize is often difficult, but if you are part of a process in which you've defined the learning outcomes together, you've mapped them together, then this should be something that works kind of well together, which is why, again, you really should make sure that you watch those learning outcome videos so it works together as a process. But all of those different pieces work together to show how your program is keeping an eye on whether or not the program learning outcomes are being achieved. Now, a question that I had answered in another video about, do you need to map all the courses? I get this one for this assessment one too. Do you need to do all the assignments? And do you need to do all of the courses? Well, you don't need to do all the assignments, like a small little introductory quiz at the beginning of the year, probably isn't going to do anything huge for your program learning outcomes. But an exam, a final exam, definitely will. You need to show that all of the students are meeting all of the program learning outcomes throughout the program, and that there are key areas in which this is being identified. So if you are creating this from scratch, you're creating a program from scratch. If I was creating an ideal program from scratch where they were thinking about this from the get-go, I would think about a really nice set of core required courses that every student needs to take that identifies that all the different levels of learning, first, second, third, and fourth year. And I would have key assignments in a few of those courses that really kind of keep an eye on the program learning outcomes. Maybe there's an exam in the first year that just identifies whether or not students are getting basic knowledge. But then in second year, there is a writing assignment where they have to kind of demonstrate the application of that basic knowledge. And by fourth year, they have created, they're proposing, they're doing a presentation on something. And I'll just use those key assignments in those key courses as ways to assess the program. And if I was the professor for those programs, for those courses, I'd also have to be open and aware that the program would be using those assignments to think about the program as a whole, right? That's another element of this. And so you might not be creating a program from scratch right now, but kind of think about whether or not there are key assignments in key courses, and how you can kind of leverage that. Some programs just send out a survey to all their faculty members and say, like, fill this out. Other programs will have conversations about what are the key courses and what are the key assignments we can map. So it's a way of just, so to answer, do you need to do all of the courses and all of the assignments? You probably don't need to do all the assignments, and you probably don't need to do all the courses, but it's important that you are thoughtful about why not and why these courses or these assignments over others. And that is a longer conversation, a more thoughtful conversation about assessments of your programs. How are you going to make sure that you are assessing your program, making sure that your program is doing what you are saying that it's going to do? Again, it's not about the individual, it's about the program. So I hope this was useful. Make sure you keep an eye on when I create some new videos about assessment, either later in 2023 or early 2024. And I also encourage you to watch the other videos on writing learning outcomes, mapping learning outcomes, and the video or the workshop that is also a video that was created for the cyclical review self-study on these different elements can also help you think kind of more broadly about these different elements of assessment and keeping an eye on it and monitoring it in relationship to your curriculum. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to work with you as you are working through this and kind of figuring out what the assessment type is best for you and your program. Bye.